Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather to reflect on a fascinating moment in international diplomacy, one that shows how a single word, delivered at the right time, can reshape narratives and even challenge great powers. The title before us, Jaishankar's one word that shattered Trump's India, is not just a headline. It is a reminder of how language, diplomacy, and national identity intersect on the global stage. Words are the building blocks of communication, but in diplomacy they carry a weight that far exceeds their size. Nations rise and fall on the strength of language, and often a single word is enough to change the course of perception, direction, or even history itself. When a statesman like Dr. S. Jaishankar chooses his words, it is not done casually. It is deliberate, precise, and deeply calculated. The idea that one word could shatter the narrative of Trump's India may sound dramatic, but it underlines an eternal truth. Words, when spoken with authority and timing, can be more powerful than armies. In international politics, leaders and diplomats are constantly engaged in battles of language. Every sentence at a press conference, every phrase in a joint statement, every emphasis in an interview is carefully weighed. Unlike long speeches filled with platitudes, it is the concise, well-placed remark that endures in memory. Think of words like independence, non-alignment, or sovereignty. Each of these has shaped global debates and the way nations position themselves. For India, a country long defined by others, by colonial rulers, by superpowers during the Cold War, or by economic observers during globalization, reclaiming the right to define itself in one decisive word is revolutionary. Jaishankar's use of such language is not about provocation, but about assertion. A single word can tell allies and rivals alike that India will not be boxed into categories that others create. It signals that India has matured beyond the stage of being a silent participant in global affairs. The reason this is so significant is because of who the audience is. When such a word is directed at someone like Donald Trump, a leader known for transactional politics and for seeing relationships through numbers and optics, it forces a recalibration. The Trump style relied heavily on creating narratives, of winning deals, of building personal rapport, of measuring success by applause. But Jaishankar's word cut through that. It did not play into flattery or performance. It was sober, grounded, and immovable. This is why one word can appear more disruptive than 100 speeches. It exposes the gap between perception and reality. For decades, India was seen as needing validation from the West, constantly negotiating from a place of compromise. But the firmness of a single word dismantled that assumption. It projected India as an equal, as a power confident enough to say no, or to assert sovereignty, or to insist on multipolarity. That shift is not just rhetorical, it transforms how India is treated in global negotiations, how its allies respect it, and how its rivals approach it. The power of a single word lies in its ability to travel. Once spoken, it is quoted, analyzed, repeated in headlines, debated in parliaments, and remembered in diplomatic circles. It acquires a life of its own. In that sense, it is not just about the speaker, but about the echo that continues long after. Jaishankar's choice proved that language, when wielded wisely, is the sharpest weapon in a diplomat's arsenal. It can challenge leaders, unsettle narratives, and affirm the dignity of a nation. In a world drowning in noise, clarity is rare, and when found in a single word, it becomes unforgettable. Dr. S. Jaishankar has carved a unique space for himself on the global stage with a style of diplomacy that is neither flamboyant nor submissive, but measured, sharp, and quietly authoritative. His approach stands in contrast to the conventional idea of diplomacy as either grand rhetoric or backroom secrecy. Instead, he relies on clarity, precision, and an unshakable confidence that reflects both his long career as a diplomat and the rising stature of India itself. What makes his style remarkable is not that he speaks more than others, but that he says less and makes it count more. At the core of Jaishankar's style is his command over language. He has an uncanny ability to compress complex geopolitical realities into simple, memorable phrases. In an age where sound bites dominate the media, he knows how to use brevity as strength. His responses are often short, but they carry layers of meaning. For instance, when asked to define India's position on global issues, he does not drown his audience in jargon. Instead, he distills India's perspective into words that both ordinary citizens and global leaders can grasp. This clarity not only makes him relatable, but also signals that India has nothing to hide or overcompensate for. Another key feature of his style is his refusal to be defensive. For a long time, Indian diplomacy had a habit of justifying itself to the world, explaining its choices as if seeking approval. Jaishankar breaks that mold. When questioned, he does not argue with insecurity, but responds with calm assurance. If India buys oil from Russia, builds strategic ties with the United States, or pursues its own path on climate change, he explains it as a sovereign decision, not as an exception to global norms. This refusal to apologize for India's interests reflects a shift in India's self-perception, from a nation trying to catch up with others to one that sees itself as a central player in a multipolar world. His style also blends firmness with politeness. He does not shout or intimidate, yet his words leave no room for doubt. This balance is rare in international affairs, where leaders often swing between aggression and appeasement. Jaishankar demonstrates that strength does not require theatrics. His composed demeanor and measured tone convey control, while his carefully chosen words signal resolve. This has earned him respect not only from allies, but also from rivals who recognize that he cannot be swayed by pressure or provocation. Jaishankar brings a strategic historian's lens to his diplomacy, having written and spoken extensively about India's civilizational depth and its long engagement with the world. He situates present-day policies within a larger narrative. This gives his words weight because they do not sound like temporary political positions, but like long-term national convictions. His ability to connect India's current choices to its historical identity strengthens the legitimacy of his arguments and reminds the world that India is not a new player, but an ancient civilization reclaiming its rightful voice. Jaishankar's style is a reflection of India's new confidence. It signals a departure from diffidence and hesitation, embracing instead clarity, firmness, and pride. His diplomacy demonstrates that influence is not only about economic or military power, but also about the power of words delivered with poise. In every setting, whether in a press interview, an international summit, or a parliamentary debate, his style communicates the same message. India is calm, India is clear, and India is confident. This quiet but undeniable authority is what sets him apart in the noisy arena of global politics. For much of modern history, India has often been viewed by the world through a transactional lens, whether as a market for goods, a supplier of cheap labor, or a partner in strategic deals. India was frequently reduced to numbers, percentages, and bargains. This outlook was especially visible in the rhetoric of leaders like Donald Trump, who measured relationships in terms of trade deficits, defense purchases, or crowd sizes at political rallies. But India, as External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar consistently reminds the world, cannot be confined to transactions alone. It is more than a deal maker or a bargaining chip. It is a civilizational power with a vision that extends beyond immediate exchanges. To understand this idea, one must recognize the distinction between transactional and transformational relationships. A transactional approach asks, what do I get now? And what do you give me in return? It is a mindset rooted in short-term gain and immediate reciprocity. India, of course, engages in trade partnerships and deals like any other nation. But Jaishankar emphasizes that India's role in the world cannot be reduced to such exchanges. Its choices are guided not only by economics, but also by values, identity, and a long-term vision of a multipolar world. When Jaishankar speaks of India's decisions, whether buying discounted oil from Russia, investing in renewable energy, or engaging with multiple global blocs, he frames them not as mere bargains, but as sovereign choices rooted in India's interests. This framing is critical because it sends a message to the world. India does not act out of compulsion or external pressure. It acts out of conviction. That conviction is shaped by its historical experience, its developmental needs, and its vision of fairness in global governance. By doing so, India challenges the tendency of powerful nations to reduce international relations to profit and loss accounts. Beyond economics, India also asserts its identity as a country that represents the aspirations of the global South. When India advocates for climate justice, vaccine equity, or reform of international institutions, it is not negotiating for immediate gains. Instead, it is projecting itself as a voice for fairness and inclusivity in a world order dominated by a few. This leadership role goes far beyond transactions. It positions India as a moral and political force that seeks to reshape the very structure of global decision-making. India's civilizational depth further reinforces this perspective. Unlike younger nations that define themselves solely by contemporary politics, India draws on thousands of years of history, philosophy, and culture. This gives it a broader understanding of global interaction, one that is not limited to contracts and deals. India's traditions emphasize dialogue, coexistence, and balance, values that inform its modern diplomatic behavior. By bringing this ethos into contemporary politics, India signals that it cannot be engaged with merely as a market or a customer. It must be respected as a partner with ideas and influence. India beyond transactions is India as a self-assured global player. It is India refusing to be boxed into categories defined by others. It is India asserting that its partnerships are not about dependence, but about equality. And most importantly, it is India reminding the world that its rise is not a bargaining chip, but a reality rooted in its civilization, its sovereignty, and its vision of a multipolar future. In this sense, India moves from being a subject of negotiations to being a shaper of global narratives. Sovereignty is the heart of a nation's existence, and for India, asserting it has become a defining feature of its foreign policy in recent years. The idea is simple yet powerful. India will make its own decisions, guided by its own interests, and no external power will dictate its choices. This assertion has grown sharper in the words and actions of leaders like Dr. Jaishankar, who has made it clear that India is not a passive participant in the global order, but an active shaper of its destiny. In a world where powerful countries often expect alignment or compliance, India's emphasis on sovereignty signals both confidence and independence. For decades, India's choices were often seen as constrained. During the Cold War, it pursued non-alignment, but was frequently accused of leaning toward one bloc or another. In the years of liberalization, global powers viewed India mainly as an emerging market eager to integrate into existing systems. But today, India's assertion of sovereignty makes it clear that it will not be a camp follower of any power, whether the United States, Russia, or China. Instead, it will chart its own course, one that balances multiple relationships while keeping national interests above all. This principle has been most visible in India's response to global conflicts and crises. When the West pressured India to take sides over the Russia-Ukraine war, Jaishankar's response was firm. India will do what is best for its people, especially when it comes to energy security. By refusing to bow to external pressure and continuing to buy oil from Russia, India demonstrated that its sovereignty was not negotiable. Similarly, on issues like climate change, India has resisted narratives that unfairly burden developing nations while holding firm to its right to prioritize its developmental needs. These stances show that sovereignty is not just a slogan but a policy framework that defines India's interactions with the world. Assertion of sovereignty also extends to how India sees itself in global institutions. For years, India has demanded reform of the United Nations and other multilateral bodies to reflect the realities of the 21st century. By insisting on its rightful place in decision-making forums, India challenges the outdated hierarchies that preserve the dominance of a few powers. This is sovereignty in action, not simply protecting national interests at home, but demanding an equal voice abroad. Equally important is how sovereignty resonates domestically. For ordinary citizens, seeing their leaders stand firm on international platforms fosters pride and confidence. It reassures them that India is not at the mercy of external dictates, but is instead capable of protecting its own path. This psychological dimension of sovereignty is as important as its political one. A nation that asserts itself abroad strengthens its unity and confidence at home. In essence, Assertion of sovereignty is the cornerstone of India's transformation into a confident global player. It means rejecting dependency, resisting coercion, and insisting on equality in international dealings. Through words and actions, Jaishankar and India's leadership have made it clear that sovereignty is not merely a principle enshrined in the Constitution, but a living, breathing force guiding foreign policy. It ensures that India is not just a participant in world affairs, but an independent, respected, and decisive voice. For a long time, India was trapped in narratives created not by itself but by others. During the colonial era, it was portrayed as a land in need of governance and guidance. After independence, it was often described as a struggling developing country burdened by poverty and inefficiency. In the Cold War years, it was boxed into labels such as non-aligned but tilted, implying indecisiveness or lack of strength. Even as its economy began to grow, the global perception of India was shaped by stereotypes: a huge market, a country of contrasts, or a junior partner to more powerful nations. Breaking free from these old narratives has been one of the most significant achievements of India's recent diplomacy, and it is something leaders like Dr. S. Jaishankar have emphasized with clarity and conviction. Old narratives are dangerous because they limit how a nation is seen and how it can act. If India is portrayed as dependent, it is treated as such by global powers. If it is viewed as indecisive, its voice carries less weight in international forums. That is why breaking these narratives is not merely about pride. It is about shifting the terms of engagement. By discarding outdated labels, India creates space to be recognized for what it truly is: a confident, sovereign, and ambitious power that acts on its own terms. Jaishankar has been instrumental in dismantling these perceptions. His words often strike directly at the assumptions that underpin old narratives. When questioned about India's choices, he does not fall into defensive explanations. Instead, he calmly asserts that India has every right to pursue its own path, just as other powers do. This is not the language of a junior partner, but of an equal. It forces the world to reassess the framework through which it views India. By challenging unfair criticism and pushing back against double standards, he ensures that India is no longer spoken for, but speaks for itself. One of the most significant breaks with the past is India's refusal to be categorized as belonging to one camp. For decades, powers tried to define India as pro-West or pro-East, aligned or non-aligned, dependent or independent. Today, India rejects such binaries. It is building strong ties with the United States while maintaining a strategic partnership with Russia. It engages with Western democracies while also playing a leading role in organizations like BRICS and the Global South. This flexibility confounds old narratives because it refuses to fit into them. Instead, India asserts a new identity, that of a multipolar actor capable of balancing relationships without compromising sovereignty. Breaking old narratives also has an impact at home. Indians increasingly see their country not as a follower, but as a leader in shaping global conversations. This shift in self-perception reinforces confidence and national pride, creating a virtuous cycle where the people expect their leaders to speak strongly, and the leaders in turn reflect that expectation on the global stage. Breaking old narratives is about reclaiming control of the story. No longer is India defined by others, it defines itself. It is no longer explained through the lens of poverty or dependency, but through the language of opportunity, strength, and vision. By challenging stereotypes and dismantling outdated perceptions, India opens the door to being recognized as a power that cannot be ignored or underestimated. In this transformation, Jaishankar's firm and articulate diplomacy plays a central role, ensuring that the old stories about India give way to a new reality, a nation that speaks with its own voice and stands tall on the world stage. In a world dominated by noise, ambiguity, and constant information flow, clarity has emerged as one of the most powerful tools a nation can wield. For India, and particularly under the guidance of diplomats like Dr. S. Jaishankar, clarity is not just a communication strategy, it is a demonstration of strength. It conveys confidence, decisiveness, and self-assuredness, signaling to both allies and rivals that India knows its priorities, understands the global context, and will act according to its principles. In international relations, where uncertainty often creates leverage for the more powerful, Being clear about one's position is a form of power in itself. Clarity begins with understanding. India's foreign policy choices are rooted in a deep awareness of its history, geography, economy, and civilizational ethos. When Jaishankar articulates India's stance on contentious issues, whether it is energy security, defense partnerships, or global governance, he does so without hesitation or vagueness. This precision demonstrates that India is neither reactive nor confused. It is deliberate and intentional. A clear message leaves no room for misinterpretation, reducing the opportunities for external forces to manipulate perceptions or apply undue pressure. In this way, clarity protects sovereignty and strengthens negotiating positions. One of the most notable aspects of clarity as strength is its ability to disrupt assumptions. For decades, global powers often approached India with a fixed set of expectations, seeing it either as a dependent developing nation or a transactional player in international affairs. Ambiguous statements or overcomplicated explanations would have reinforced such perceptions. By contrast, Jaishankar's direct and unambiguous communication shatters those assumptions. When India takes a firm position on a strategic issue, it signals to the world that it is capable of independent thought and that its decisions are not contingent on appeasing any external power. Clarity, in this sense, is both defensive and assertive. It safeguards India's interests while asserting its authority. Clarity also fosters credibility. Nations that speak with precision are taken seriously in multilateral forum. Leaders who know exactly where they stand inspire confidence among allies and demand respect from competitors. When India articulates its policies clearly, whether in speeches at the United Nations or in bilateral negotiations, it builds a reputation of reliability. This reputation matters because international relations are not merely about immediate deals, they are about shaping long-term perceptions. Countries that consistently communicate their positions with clarity become predictable partners and formidable interlocutors. Clarity is empowering domestically. Citizens, too, respond to leadership that is transparent and incomprehensible. When India's foreign policy is communicated clearly, it strengthens public confidence, reduces speculation, and unites the nation behind its global strategy. A government that can explain its choices confidently reinforces the sense that it is in control and acting in the country's best interest. Clarity as strength is about more than just avoiding confusion. It is about projecting confidence, commanding respect, and maintaining independence in the complex arena of global politics, where ambiguity is often weaponized. India's commitment to clear, decisive, and consistent communication under Jaishankar's guidance transforms words into a form of strategic power. It demonstrates that in diplomacy, as in life, knowing precisely what you stand for and saying so without hesitation is one of the most profound forms of strength a nation can possess.